You're listening to Unmuted Love. Hi there, I'm C. Ushelman, and with 35 years as a marriage and family therapist and 25 years as a parent of 2 children I brought home from the foster care system, I want to welcome you here to Unmuted Love Podcast, the one place where nothing is off limits to say out loud about parenting children from difficult beginnings.
Stop for a minute, stop and breathe for a minute, long it over your head, try to listen instead, won't you? Think for a minute, who you wanna be for a minute, don't get over your head, you're like everyone else, aren't you?
Sometimes it's real sweet around here, and sometimes it ain't so pretty, because this is 100% Unmuted Love. So let's go.
You'll be just
Hi parents! I'm so glad you're hanging out with me today. Ordinarily, I start each episode with a regulating breath or two, but I'll be walking you through a few neuro hacks a little later, so stay tuned, regulation ahead. Last episode was part 1 of Tame Your Triggers, and today is part 2. I left off promising to talk about attachment styles and how they get activated, causing us to flip our lids as parents. So let's just jump right in. Your attachment style is what's always left over from your childhood. Even if you had a great childhood, that's your attachment style is left over from that. If you didn't have a great one, your attachment style is left over from that. It's how past trauma gets subtly passed along. If you had a traumatic childhood, then you got your attachment style from how you were interacted with from your parent and what your response was. Then you grow up and you become a parent, and then you have your attachment style that's not a good one because of trauma, and then you do the same things, just like in that cycle, that were done to you, right? And it just goes around and around. So there's the obvious transmission, like my parents spanked me, yelled, shamed me, and that's what I do. So sometimes I hear from parents, look, I got spanked, my parents yelled at me and I turned out okay. People say that to me all the time. But did you? Did you really 100% turn out okay? And like, well, yeah, I'm successful. I mean, that's the reason why I work so hard. And I'm like, okay, but do you feel really great always about yourself? Well, that doesn't matter. A lot of times people put away the internal way they feel about themselves, or some of their deeper seated notions about themselves they got after being yelled at or spanked or shamed a lot. They dismiss that part. That's part of their attachment style, believe it or not. The attachment style that person got has them dismissing how they felt, because when they were a child, they were dismissed. So they grew up to have an attachment style that dismisses their own feelings, and then they interact with their own children in that same way, dismissing their own children's feelings. Does that make sense? So the cycle goes on and on. This subtle, but not subtle if you're raising children, because it's acting out on you all the time. It's just in your life. That cycle's in your life all the time if your attachment style was impacted by trauma in childhood. And by trauma, it can be any number of things, including just being raised traditionally, like spare the rod, spoil the child kind of rearing can be very traumatizing for certain children. Not everybody, and depending on how big that message was, it can really have impacted you, even though maybe your parents are still married, they didn't have any alcohol or drugs, they weren't violent, they didn't do any of the things that would get you an ACEs score, but the traditional parenting alone could have left its mark on you, and then you're continuing the traditional cycle, perhaps with children who come from difficult beginnings. If the children you're raising come from difficult beginnings and you try to use that traditional parenting style of spare the rod, spoil the child kind of thing, then that's going to activate their threat response. And so you're going to have a child that feels threatened all the time by your parenting style. That's really important for you to know, because kids who come from difficult beginnings need a different kind of parenting than traditional. So it's important to realize that and understand that just because you were spanked and you were yelled at and shamed and all that, and you came out okay, if you're raising children from difficult beginnings, it is very possible that they will not come out okay from that, because they need a different kind of parenting in order to heal. They have to heal first. This is what I promised you. I would teach you about the 4 styles of attachment. And this is where it gets a little deep and heady, so sorry. but it's kind of important. If you were a person who came from a secure family, right? Your parents were loving, they were available to you, they had a secure attachment themselves, meaning they came from pretty good beginnings with no trauma, then you have what's called secure. You have a secure attachment. That means when somebody melts down, you actually have compassion for their upset, right? You just naturally have it. Like, oh, you poor little guy, you're having a hard time. That's a secure response. If a teenager tears off, you might be like, well, I'm really tired of that. He's having such a hard time. You still would be secure if you said that, right? You're tired of it because you're a person, but your response is not like, when he gets home, I'm going to beat him. When he gets home, I'm taking his car away from him. When he gets home, he's in trouble. A secure base would have you be more compassionate and more understanding and more empathic toward your child's upset. That would be your natural automatic response. Even if you were tired, even if you were sick to death of this child's behavior, your response would still tend to be in this category. Now, you can get totally burnt out. You can have blocked parenting and get totally burnt out if you have a secure base, and that's a different sort of category. So you may be like so overwhelmed by the big baffling behaviors of your child from difficult beginnings that your secure base gets kind of like twisted up and you're exhausted and you can't hold your base anymore. That's possible. But you would still always be coming from a place of, I know what I need to do and I want to. I'm just having a hard time showing up. Number 2 here is all the rest are insecure, by the way. So there's only one secure. All the rest are insecure. So number 2 is insecure, and it's a big bunch of names, but it's called anxious ambivalent in childhood. Anxious ambivalent attachment style. In an adult, it's called preoccupied. And that just means you're preoccupied with relationships. I'm going to talk more specifically about how you would know this in a minute, but I just want to actually say what they are before I get into what they are. Number 3 is insecure avoidant in children and dismissive in adults. So a child who's avoidant in childhood, like they just stay away from you, they don't want anything to do with you, they go in their room, they stay in their room, they never come out, they never try to connect, may become pretty dismissive as adults, but in childhood they're called avoidant. And they're avoiding traumatic experience, right? They had traumatic experience and now they're avoiding it. And then the last one is insecure disorganized in children, and it stays disorganized in adulthood. So disorganized is the most disturbed attachment style because it's the most baffling and it's hard to heal. So if you have a disorganized child, it would be hard for you not to have some serious burnout. If you're disorganized, it'll be really hard for you to parent a child because you will not be coming from a very secure base. You'll be coming from a very insecure base, and it'll be unpredictable to the child, and that's going to create a threat in them all the time because they can't tell where you're coming from. So let's just talk about insecure, anxious ambivalent first, right? So anxious ambivalent in a child, and then preoccupied in an adult. So an adult would be preoccupied with connection or loss of connection in relationships, right? So they're always thinking about their relationship. And they anticipate abandonment, so they may actually cut their losses by abandoning first. So this style approaches almost all relationships with anger. Why aren't you doing what I told you to do? Why don't you come talk to me more? Why aren't you acting nice to me? Why, right? Just like a constant barrage of anger aimed at the object that they really want to get close to, but they're coming after it with anger. And that's covering up fear of abandonment. Like they don't love me, right? And I'm angry about it. And then a person who has this kind of style is assured when a trusted other can tolerate the anger and approaches with love. If you had a child who had this and they were angry and you approached with compassion and understanding and love, you're going to be a healing factor in their life. But if you come after them in anger because they're upset, now you're going to be reenacting their trauma. So the hallmark of this particular type is like, when you see my anger coming toward you, tell me you love me, which is very hard to do. Only a secure person really can do a good job of this, right? You have to come from a secure base of I'm okay and you're okay. That's a secure base for you to be able to stay loving in the face of somebody's anger. If you have a traumatized child, that child for this attachment style may trigger you to seek love from your child intrusively, right? Try to get in their lives to understand them and know them. And you might want to know who their friends are and like who's dating who. And like, you're just really involved. You might be over involved in trying to be in your child's life. if you have this attachment style, this ambivalent or preoccupied style, you might need affirmation of affection from your child. Come hug me. Come give me a hug. Why don't you hug me anymore? Come on, give me a kiss, right? Lots of pulling them in, pulling them in. You may have trouble bonding because the child, if they come from difficult beginnings, right, because they're traumatized, they may be kind of rejecting, and that might be hard for you then to bond with them because you don't feel loved. You might get hurt and disappointed and ultimately angry when challenged by your child. So like if the child says no to you, or I don't believe in that, or I don't want to do that, then you may have a lot of feelings like hurt and disappointed. And then ultimately you will be angry. You might feel unloved when your child doesn't do as you desire. You might just feel like they don't love me. I don't know why they're not, they don't care about me. Like if you have a chronic thought of that and you really feel like you need it, then this is probably your attachment style. This same style runs a little hot and cold in relationships, right? When the person is coming toward you and it's all lovey-dovey toward you, then you love them back. But if they're having a hard time or they're kind of removed for some reason in their life, you may be like, oh, no, and put up your hand because you're ambivalent, right? You're all on or kind of off. You may fear your child's anger, ambivalence, or rejection. You may fear it, and you may reject or cut off from your child at a certain point if you feel like they don't love you, and then you're not going to be bothered with them anymore. And so you might just shut down and not try to connect with them anymore. Okay, so if you happen to be a grown-up, insecure, avoidant child, that makes you a dismissive adult. And if you're a dismissive adult, you may be dismissive in intimate relationships. Whatever, I don't care, right? You may be just, I don't care. I don't need you. You might fear being vulnerable, which would be needing the person. You might be fiercely independent. I'm fine. If you want to move out, that's fine. If you don't want to live here, that's fine. I don't care. I'm good, right? So that sort of, I'm good. I've got it all together. I don't need anybody attitude. Sometimes a dismissive adult feels superior to other attachment styles. Like, I'm glad I have this one, because I don't need anybody. They come from that place. This attachment style has difficulty accepting help and taking in love, right? When somebody comes loving toward them, they're scared of that, right? It's like, oh, but you might hurt me and I don't want to be hurt, so I'd rather be a little distant. So they keep distant in relationships. And they often deny their own needs, and they definitely dismiss the needs of others. So when a child is melting down and a dismissive parent comes to them, they'll be like, yeah, get over it, pull yourself up, dust off, we're done, right? I'm over it. People don't generally fit neatly into one category or another. They tend to overlap. So some of you will be avoidant and ambivalent. Some of you will be disorganized and dismissive. So if your traumatized child comes into your life, if you have avoidant attachment style, you may be triggered into parenting from afar. Yeah, I'm not going to do it. And you have a partner, you're like, you do it. You take care of them. I don't want to deal with it. Or you might avoid home life altogether. You might work all the time. You work too much. You'll be busy around the house, or, oh, I've got to do the laundry. Oh, I've got to do this. Oh, right. Just kind of getting away in busyness. If you're avoidant or dismissive in your style, you might treat your child like they're a little adult and expect them to act like little adults because you don't want to be bothered with this. You may abandon them emotionally, like, I don't care. I really don't care. You might be utilitarian rather than connected, right? You might just do all the things you're supposed to do to parent, but you don't have much heart for it. You might resist eye contact with them. You might resist affection, or you may not give easy praise, and you might push away in anger. So that's if you're triggered, right? On your regular day, you might act perfectly fine. But on the days when you're too stressed to regulate yourself, or when you're dysregulated, this might be how you act. That would be triggered, right? On a day when you're dysregulated, or when you just had it, that's a dysregulated state, and that means you will probably fall back on a trigger. Okay, and the last one is insecure, disorganized. And that's true of children. It's called that for children and adults. So a disorganized person, attachment style person, is easily emotionally dysregulated. So they get upset really easily. They're unpredictable in relationships. They're kind of like, I love you, hate you. They're all in and all out at the same time. Like, they seem really in, and then if you wrong them, they may be really out. So just that quick. And so they may be kind of like highs and then big lows, right? Big on, big off. They might feel intense need and also intense repulsion at other people's need or their own needs. They may be repulsed by their own needs and therefore they're repulsed by other people's needs. They misattune often. They misread others' emotions. Like they don't understand when somebody's melting down. Like, why are you melting down? I don't get it. Like they have a hard time with empathy. They feel conflicted. They fear and desperately need relationships. That push me, pull you is kind of going on inside them all the time. They feel confused about love, like what is it? They need unconditional love themselves. And I mean the word unconditional, like just, you have to love me no matter what. Because if you don't, I can't tolerate the disapproval and the rejection, so then I'm going to cut off and be done with you. Disorganized people have a really hard time in life. And they also, if you're a parent who's disorganized, you might have a really hard time parenting as well. If you have a traumatized child, you may parent unpredictably. You may be off and on scary. You might instill fear in your child. You may fear your child and you might hate your child. And you might reject your child. And you might be demanding and unforgiving, frustrated and harsh. You may abuse and or abandon your child out of your dysregulated, disorganized state. If you're this parent, you are plagued with a lot of dysregulation and wounding from your own childhood. And it keeps coming out in your parent-child relationship. And frankly, if this is occurring, I want to tell you, you really do need probably some help in the therapy world, because it's going to take a while to work through all that. And that's just trauma. What we're looking at here is just big trauma. And trauma can be treated. And I don't want to say that the other forms of attachment aren't big trauma, because they are too, but it didn't lead to this level of attachment disruption. What is the answer? It's about being embodied. It's about parenting your child from an embodied state. What does that mean, embodied? Embodied mindfulness. What's that? Well, remember we talked about thoughts when we talked about feelings and we talked about body sensations. Well, in order to parent well, if you have triggers, you're going to have to become more mindful of your body. You're going to have to become more mindful of your cognitions and your feelings. Before parenting your child, you have to regulate. You have to regulate. You have to be regulated. If you have the slightest bit of in your stomach or in your chest, or if you feel clenching in your jaw, or your fists are tight, or your ears are ringing, like you feel like you're just burning, for example, all that's called dysregulation. That needs to be regulated. It can be regulated. Whatever your child's doing doesn't deserve this level of reactivity. What can you do to regulate? You can breathe. Breathing is the number one best thing you can do until you're regulated. Keep breathing. And there are ways to breathe that are more regulating than others. So if you just breathe like this, you're actually activating your threat system. So that's making it worse. Breathing needs to be inhale through your nose, 4 counts, hold it at the top, hold it in for 4 counts, and then blow it out your mouth for 4 counts. And do that repeatedly until you actually calm down. And that means your heart rate calms down, your breathing becomes slower, and your mind gets clearer. But until you get a clear mind, until you have a calm body, don't speak. So it's a discipline. It's the biggest discipline, not speaking, right? It's like put your hand over your mouth if you have to. Take space, do whatever you need to do. It's not an emergency likely. Most things that children are doing that are wrong are not really emergencies. Now sometimes they do an emergency, but if there's an emergency going on, you're not going to yell at them. You're not going to lose your mind, right? You're going to need to be calm in that moment. So even if there is an emergency, you're going to need to regulate yourself in order to function very well during it. If you aren't able to regulate yourself, you will not be a co-regulator for your child. You will not be helping your child in the least bit. Because as long as you're fuming and upset, or as long as you're collapsed and given up, any of the states that we talked about that's dysregulated, you will not be able to regulate them, because their threat response is going to be triggered the whole time. Because you're a threat to them. Because you're bigger, you have more money and more insurance. You're more powerful than they are. And so their threat system is going to get activated way more easily than yours. And yours is already activated. So if yours is activated, that's going to send them into survival brain too. If you can't regulate, how can your child in your presence, right? It's really important to realize that embodied mindfulness is where you need to go. How do you get there? Here's some neuro hacks for you. So I already talked about the 4 count breathing. I want to teach you to neurogenic shake. shaking is actually a way also to regulate. So these are neuro hacks. So what that means is this is the quickest way to get yourself calmed down. So take space, first of all. Don't stand there in the presence of your child and do this. Go into the bathroom and do this, or go into your bedroom and do this. But neurogenic tremors are literally this. You don't have to make the sound. But if you were making a sound, it would sound like that. Right? And you just tremor your whole body. This is what animals do. When animals are in some kind of survival brain, before they come out of it, they tremble like that. They shake. And they do that to activate their nervous system in a way that sheds all of the toxins from their body. And so humans can do it too, because remember, we were animals once. You can just activate that. Come on, let's just try it together just for fun. Come on, let's just do it. Let's neurogenically tremor together. Come on. Try it and see what it feels like. Ooh. Okay, now notice. What do you feel? I actually felt kind of activated in parts of my body that weren't activated before. Like I felt kind of like stimulated, but then like afterwards kind of calm. Just neurogenic tremor. If you did that for 5 minutes, you would be super relaxed. You also might need your neck adjusted, but maybe 5 minutes is too long. Couple minutes. Change your system. So you could use cupping. This. Doesn't hurt. Hard enough so you feel it, but not so hard that it hurts. And you just tap yourself all over your body like that. Big taps. Try it with me so you can feel what it feels like. And all of your body, not just your arms, right? Your torso, your legs, your butt, the whole bit. Bimp, bimp, bimp. Now what do you notice? Okay, I want you to do this one with me, and this is an ear massage, and this is my favorite neuro hack. I use this all the time in my own office because I don't know, when I listen to somebody for an hour who's having some kind of traumatic experience or whatever, I get really tight in my neck and shoulders, and I feel like I've taken on the trauma in my body. I have to release that. And so every hour I do the ear massage. So do it with me. I want you to take your pincher fingers and put them in the top of the curl and just massage around the top of the curl. Forward and then backward. Kind of hurts a little. Then I want you to take your pincher fingers and start at the top of your cartilage at the curl and behave as though, pinch them as though all the way down the curl, as though you could flatten out like you're made of Play-Doh and you could flatten out your curve. This is the most important part here. So start at the top and flatten the cartilage out and go down like maybe 3 or 4 times. And then if you had pierced ears at the bottom, just the traditional ones, pinch where the piercing is and just circle around forward, little circles, and backward. And then one more time, I want you to pinch the top of the cartilage and try to flatten it out all the way down to the bottom of your ear. And now let your arms down and just notice what you feel. What do you notice? I can feel the back of my neck warm up, and I can feel it kind of calm down all the way down my brainstem. And when that happens, my whole body heats up a little bit. Like I'm hotter right now than I was a minute ago. And my ears are hot and my back of my head is warm. That is direct access to your midbrain, which is your limbic brain, which is where your fight or flight lives. And this is a direct avenue to that system, and it calms that system down. Calms your vagus nerve. Your vagus nerve runs from your brainstem all the way down through your throat and into your heart area, around your stomach and into your groin. So it's a wandering nerve. And if it's tight and inflexible, right, it's not toned well, it's too tight, then it holds your whole body like it's in stress. And this actually activates that. And stimulating the vagus nerve is what activates it in a positive way. Another thing you could do to activate the vagus nerve, which is your nerve that, it's why they talk about your stomach being your second brain, is that this vagus nerve connects your brain all the way through your heart down into your stomach. So it really impacts it when you're nervous. So another way to stimulate your vagus nerve would be to say the sound of VOO, right? VOO. Let's do it together because it's so much more fun. Say voo. Voo. Can you feel the vibration in your, like in the back of your throat? That is stimulating your vagus nerve. So that is a very calming thing to do for yourself. These are neurohacks, right? These are short-circuiting your thoughts, and they're going straight to the parts of you that regulate your nervous system. Brain buttons are doing things like twiddling your fingers, twiddling your thumbs, doing the itsy bitsy spider. Itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout, right? That actually calms your body down. Any kind of cross body movements, and you did it with your knees, your legs, cross body. This cross body behavior will integrate your left and right brain. So that's really, really good. And then if you're trying to calm yourself down really quickly, you could think of a memory that's really funny. You could think of something really amazing or something super weird or different, silly, even something beautiful. And so when you do that, what you're doing is you're pulling for the part of your brain that is in your left brain. That's your logical, concrete brain, and it pulls you out of your emotional brain and into another experience altogether. And that's what you want. You want to pull yourself into a novel other experience. And so, like, there's even a form of therapy where you ask people to imagine a really delightful, beautiful thing, and then you do blinking process around that. And that actually short circuits some trauma as well. So this is very similar to that, even without the blinking. And it really does work. It's kind of a weird thing. Like if you just start thinking about something funny, or if you pull up, I'll tell you what, if I pull up any kind of dog video or cat video on YouTube, I mean, I'm totally in it. Whatever I was doing, it's over. Now I'm doing this. So think of what things really are distracting or funny to you and go there, because that's a neurohack for getting out of upset at your child and into a different part of your brain altogether. I feel like taking a nap, to be honest. Now I'm like ready to sleep. I'm relaxed. If you did all that before you went to bed at night, you would sleep better. Here's the cognitive part. Until you have regulated your body, you actually probably won't be able to have regulated thoughts. That's why I'm telling you, start with yourself, regulate through breath, space, and some kind of neurohack right away before you try to fix your thinking. Because if you just try to fix your thinking without calming down your nervous system, it's not going to happen. You're just going to bounce right back into your left brain upset and be in fight still. And when you're in fight, you can't think clearly. But once you've done some neurohacks and you feel like you're much calmer, then ask yourself, what am I thinking? And if you're thinking that little brat, I'm just so tired of him, then think something loving. Oh, he's so cute when he's sleeping. Think something loving, even if that's all you got. It's just think something loving. And believe it or not, that's all cognitive therapy is. Think something else. So know what you're thinking. If you're thinking negative things, if you're thinking some kind of negative thing, tell yourself a new story, right? Tell yourself something also true, but that you've just in this moment forgotten because you're so upset. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? Then breathe until you feel at least neutral. It's just doing some basic work on yourself so that you understand that you are not ready to engage a child who's upset until you've done some of this work. Ask yourself, where are my body sensations? Where are they? Are they in my chest? Are they in my shoulders? Work to relax the tension until your body says, ah. Like right now, my body is saying, ah. I did enough of this to make my body feel way more relaxed than I was just 5 minutes ago. We can do a lot to calm ourselves down and to regulate ourselves and to relieve ourselves of triggers by using some of these tools and also using some cognitive tools. The first ones are neurohacks for your body, and then the second one is for your thinking, really. So once all this is done, you can attend securely to your child because almost nothing is an emergency. I was a parent that thought so many things were an emergency. I had to discipline quickly, like it was a fire I had to put out. I just find that so funny now because it's so like, why did I think that? A kid throws a block at me and I think that's an emergency. Or a kid says some big mean word, and I think I have to attend to that right now. Like, no, I don't. It's not an emergency, right? It doesn't have to be attended to like that. It only feels like an emergency, and feelings aren't facts. And that's what you have to keep in mind when you're parenting kids. Mostly nothing's an emergency. And even if it feels like it, doesn't mean it is, right? It means probably it isn't, but you are being triggered. While attending to your child's needs, adjust yourself for secure attachment. I'm avoidant, right? I have dismissive attachment style. That's my style that I got in childhood from trauma. I have earned secure attachment at this point in my life, which means that I've just been to a lot of therapy and I've been loved really securely by my partner for so many years that I actually feel okay and secure now. And that is what earned secure attachment means. But my attachment style under stress, under real big stress, is to be dismissive. Just because you have that attachment style does not mean you have to always behave out of that attachment style. If you know about it, I really know about mine. I can feel it the minute I have it, right? Because what I want to do is tell you to go take care of yourself and come back when you're better. I mean, that would be my stressed out response to a child that's upset. I can just hear those words and know that I am dysregulated. That's not something I want to say to a child. But what do I want to say to a child in a secure way? I want to be a secure base for a child. So if I'm regulated, I can behave in a securely attached way, even though I have dismissive attachment. Does that make sense? Like if I know what secure attachment behaviors are, I can behave in that way, even when my own style, my own tendency would be something else. So what is a secure attachment style? What does it look like? You can't parent until you're regulated. Get your emotions under control and get your thinking clear. I know what secure attachment looks like. When I first started parenting, I didn't know what it looked like. I had to teach myself what it was. But what it is this: having soft eyes toward your child, even when they're upset. Having a soft body, like not going into it like it's a fight, or like you're defeated at the front, right? Where you're collapsed, kind of. Having a soft face. So I don't know, if you could see my face, you would see that my face has two wrinkles in my forehead that look like I'm mad all the time. I've had those since I was 20, so it's not like I've ever had a soft face. So I have to work really hard to look not mad. My kids have told me this over the years. Like, Mom, your face is scary. Like, I hate that. But it's true. But some of us just have a clenched face, like when we're upset, we look upset. And so our kids are very attuned to that. You can practice having a softer face, and you can get rid of the hairy eyeball because that's not good for kids. It activates their threat system. So get rid of your hairy eyeball look, that one that looks like it could kill you in your tracks, that eyeball. That's not a good look to have for kids. Find kind words to say to your child. Listen to your child, talk less. Observe what's going on, talk less. You notice talk less is in here twice. It's because we parents talk our kids into deafness, right? We talk to them too much and then they're deaf to our voice. So listen more, talk less. That's an attached parent. Soft, loving, gentle, kind. That's a securely attached parent who is not threatened by their child's upset, and who is not coming to the world as though everything a child does is an emergency, because it isn't. It's just being a child. So remember, meeting your own needs related to the child is not the same as doing what is in the best interest of the child. Sometimes our need is to punish, like that's our need. It's to get them to do something that we want them to do. That's our agenda. That's meeting our needs in relation to the child, and it's not the same as what's in the best interest of the child. So here's an example. Should you make the child clean something up right now, or should you console the child who might be upset because they don't want to clean up? I'm going to tell you, it's to console the child, to have compassion and care. I know, baby, you don't want to clean up right now. Come here, let me give you a hug. How can I help? I'll pick up one, you pick up one. Meeting them where they're at and being loving, right? They're having an upset because it feels overwhelming for them in that moment for whatever reason, or they just really don't want to do it. I mean, I try to think of things like if my husband came in and said, go mow the lawn right now, I'd be like, no, I don't want to. And if he insisted I do it right now, I mean, I might have a tantrum myself. So I try to think in terms of like, gosh, we do kind of make demands of children sometimes, and that we expect them to just drop whatever they're doing, whatever their agenda is, and just make them do it, instead of sort of checking in, seeing where they're at, negotiating, or not like negotiating if they'll do it, but when they'll do it. Ask yourself, Should I be correcting right now or connecting? So what I will tell you is connection over correction every single time. Connection first, then if you need to correct, correct. But until you've made a connection, you're just gonna be punishing them. And they may or may not even understand why you're doing it. Because you don't know, you're just coming down with your own need, which is to level some discipline. I don't know if you know this, but punishment doesn't teach kids anything except they're scared of you, they're mad at you, they think you're mean, and they think they're bad. That's how most kids from difficult beginnings experience punishment. They don't see it as a cause and effect event the way you might be thinking it will. They will see it. They see it as you just being mean to them. And we can talk more about that in another parenting session, but this is true of most kids from difficult beginnings. If you have a child that is securely attached, typical brain structure, and they haven't had any trauma at all in their lives, then you might be able to correct before you connect. But if you're raising a child from difficult beginnings, you really have to connect first. So the question is, do you want them to fear you or do you want them to love you? Do you want them to be afraid or do you want them to feel loved? These are important questions you have to ask yourself. I have had parents say to me, and I was a parent like this, I thought they needed to fear me to obey me. And I hear parents say that quite a lot now that, well, I want them to fear me a little bit because I want them to do it. And I'm like, well, what if they didn't fear you, but they respected you and they trusted you and they wanted to do right by you? What if the relationship were strong and powerful? What if that was what made them do the thing, do right, basically? And that's hard to trust that, right? Because most of us were raised with fear of our parents. But there's another way. And if you have a child with a brain that's been harmed by trauma, you really have to go with love. You have to go with respect. You have to go with boundaries as your tool for correction, having boundaries and limits rather than punishments and discipline. And then ask yourself, do I want compliance or do I want them to feel safe? When you're raising children from difficult beginnings, felt safety needs to be your priority, because without felt safety, there'll be no relationship between you and that child. And you won't get compliance generally. You'll get something, but it probably won't look like compliance. It'll probably look more like they might do what you tell them and then they'll act out later. Or they might just tell you, no, I'm not going to do it, and refuse completely. And now you're in the battle of wills, right? You're in a power struggle. You can learn, no matter what your attachment style is, you can learn secure attachment. You might have to deal with your own trauma. Like if you were traumatized in childhood, get some help to understand your own trauma. It's not that easy. Just because you know what happened in childhood doesn't mean you really fully understand how to heal from it. So, knowing that you had trauma, but not being healed from it doesn't really work. You actually have to get some healing action in there. Share your vulnerability with your partner or your friends. Learn how to be vulnerable. Learn how to own your fear and your needs, because that makes you a more secure person, right? It's how you move from insecure to earned security, is by facing the truth about yourself. Know your attachment style. There's a quiz online that's called just Attachment Style Quiz. You can just type that in the browser and it'll take you to a quiz, and you can answer the questions and come up with your attachment style. It's free. And then that'll help you identify it. Make sure you answer the questions truthfully, though. If you answer the questions like you wish you were, then you're just going to come out secure, of course. That's not helpful if you're not. Practice embodied mindfulness. That means stop, drop your agenda, notice how you feel, notice what you're thinking, and regulate, right? So it might just be simple breathing, but it might be taking space. It might be doing a neuro hack, and it might be asking yourself some cognitive questions. What was I thinking just now that got me so upset? What was I feeling, and where was I feeling it in my body? That's embodied mindfulness. Learn regulation skills. We went through some. There's way more. There are way more regulation skills, but we didn't have time to go through them today. I prefer neurohacks myself because they work real fast. Learn acceptance skills, like this is your child, the one that's in front of you, not the one you wish you had. So acceptance is a big part of a secure attachment style. It's accepting your child, recognizing them, seeing them for who they are rather than who you want them to be. Learn giving skills, how to give to your child freely, give love freely, give affection freely, give treats freely, just give, be giving. Like being stingy as a style, as a kind of approach to life, will probably not land you in the secure base ultimately, because we have to give a lot to our kids in order for them to feel like we care about them. And that doesn't mean stuff, it just means of the heart. Learn attunement skills. That means matching your child, giving them soft eyes, giving them a tone of voice that they can hear, having a body stance that's not overpowering. Like sit down when you're going to talk to a child that's upset instead of standing up over them. Learn prosody skills, and prosody is just the sound and the cadence of your tone. So when you talk to a child, you can talk to a child like this. That's poor prosody. Or you can talk like this. That is lighter prosody, right? It's more attuned prosody to a calmer stance. So just be thinking about, what is your prosody like? How do you talk to your children? If you have younger children, you need to talk to them in a kind of prosaic way, like a nursery rhymey way. And that helps them because they can hear that better. But you don't have to talk in a nursery rhyme to them or anything like that. But just recognizing that, I don't know, I'm old enough to know Miss Mary from Romper Room. And if you're old, you know Miss Mary from Romper Room. And she used to look through her looking glass and I see Cindy and I see Bobby and I see, right? She did that. And every kid that she was looking at thought she was talking to them, or that she was seeing them, because of her prosody and her attunement skills. I wish we still had that. That was a sweet little show. Learn reciprocity skills. That's give and take. Sometimes we over demand of our kids, and really sometimes we can have more reciprocal relationship. Yeah, I'll do this if you do that. I'll pick up one, you pick up one, right? That's reciprocity. And learn repairing skills. You know, if you've yelled at your child in your triggered state, apologize. If you have been mean, apologize. Own it. Own your triggers. And that will help your relationship with your child. All of these things are secure base things. People with a secure base that are not traumatized, that have learned how to be loving people in life, tend to have these qualities. So you can learn these things. It takes a little time if you are absent of many of them, but most of us know how to do these things. We just sometimes don't with children. And I just want to encourage you to think about upping your secure attachment with your children, because that will increase and improve your relationship. And it's only through relationship that you get what you hope for from children. And not all the time, but more often. Now you know the steps. Will you challenge yourself to become what your child needs? And this is what they need. You to be steady, solid, and secure, right? You to be a solid, steady, and secure base for them. That means a securely attached style for them, so that they don't feel whipped around or rejected or pushed away, or the object of your anger or your frustration, or the things that you say to them when you're triggered. Because, you know, the words you use with your children are the words they have inside their head later on. They're the words they say to themselves later. So if you say loving things to them, that's what they say to themselves later. But if you say harsh, critical things to them, that's what they say to themselves later. And those are really hard to change. They stick with you across your whole adulthood. And that can lead to you being less successful, less happy, less content in your life. It's when we're triggered that we say mean things, you know, like, you're so selfish, you're such a brat, I'm so tired of you, right? Parents say these things all the time to their children in dysregulated states. And because they're dysregulated, they can kind of set them aside, like, well, I wouldn't have said all that if you hadn't been like that. If you hadn't behaved that badly, I wouldn't have said all that. But that's not true. You know, a child's poor behavior does not sanction us as parents to be mean or to be triggered and to say rude and mean and hurtful things. We need to own that we're triggered and regulate ourselves and become the parents we want to be, rather than expecting our children to become children we want them to be, because that's not working. You first. That's what I say. Parents first. You're their model, and that'll last a lifetime. I hope you found today's information helpful and that you are better able to tame your own triggers now. Thank you for joining me here on Unmuted Love. And remember, parents, your love matters. Hey parents, this is C. Get the help you need to end destructive and chaotic behavior in your home while parenting children from difficult beginnings. I know you need help, and the Love Plus parenting model actually works. I'm inviting you to work with me personally for 6 months in my virtual therapeutic parent program, and I guarantee you results, or 100% of your investment back. How is that for a blue ribbon deal? I'm looking forward to working with you. See you on the inside.
Stop for a minute. Stop and breathe for a minute. Don't get over your head. Try to listen instead, won't you? Think for a minute. Who you want to be for a minute. Don't get over your head. You're like everyone else, aren't you? You could gain from being a bit nicer. Know when to talk and when to shut your mouth.
The Unmuted Love podcast is hosted by me, C. Eshelman, attachment and trauma specialist at the Attach Place in Sacramento, California. Our podcast producer is the amazing Saya Clark, and our theme song is Nicer by Houses on the Hill, licensed through Epidemic Sound. Thank you for being such loyal listeners here on Unmuted Love. I'll see you all next week.
You'll be just fine.